Are you aware of the remarkable ways in which technology is revolutionising agriculture? From AI to IoT, the agriculture sector is not just about tractors and soil. It's now about smart, sustainable farming that promises a brighter future for all. So today on Tech Talks Daily, I'm going to be joined by the CTO at Land O'Lakes. My guest name's Teddy. He's at the forefront of using innovative technologies to reshape agriculture, ensuring a more resilient and sustainable food system. So how is Land O'Lakes leveraging technology to make farming more efficient, profitable and sustainable? Before I invite today's guest on, I just got to give a quick shout out to the sponsors of Tech Talks Daily right now, and that is a company called Kiteworks. And I've partnered with them because legacy managed file transfer tools are dangerously looking dated and sometimes lack the security that today's remote workforce demands. So companies that continue relying on outdated technology, obviously they put their sensitive data at risk. So when we're discussing the landscape of secure MFT solutions, Kiteworks is one of those companies that stand out as a paragon of heightened security and compliance because the FedRAMP moderate authorization, which Kiteworks has held since 2017 through the Department of Defense, is not just a badge of honor, it's actually a testament to their unwavering commitment to robust security protocols. So Kiteworks is FedRAMP moderate authorized, which eases the pain to CMMC compliance, offering a significant advantage to customers in terms of time, effort and financial resources. So that is why I've partnered with them. So if you're interested in stepping to the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks, visit kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get started today. But now it's time to get today's guest on. Buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the US, where Teddy is waiting to explore the digital transformation in agriculture. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Teddy Bekele. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at Land O'Lakes. Land O'Lakes is a farm-to-fork cooperative based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, or just outside of Minneapolis. I've been in this role for about 5 years, and my role really is about running our technology organization, helping with digital transformation, and looking after the security of our organization.
Well, a huge welcome to the show. One of the things I try and do here every single day is get people thinking differently about technology and its impacts on our lives, our world, our work, and everything in between. I think when most people think about technology, they don't automatically associate innovations in agriculture or tech's role in farm to fork. So can you tell me a little bit more about the transformative technologies that are currently being implemented at Land O'Lakes and how they're actually revolutionizing traditional farming practices?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's lots of exciting things going on. So I'm really happy to dive into this, and I think we'll have a really fun discussion. So let's just kind of quickly, 30 seconds, start on the structure of the company. That way you sort of understand all the entities, and then we talk about the technologies that we're implementing. So we have about four divisions in our organization. Starts with our Winfield United business. That's a wholesale distribution business where we buy seed, crop protection, and plant nutrition products from large manufacturers like a Bayer, Syngenta, Corteva. And then we sell those products to our retailers. These are locally owned and operated retailers in rural communities here in the United States. So anywhere in the Midwest, the West, the South. And those retailers then sell those products along with other services to row crop farmers, predominantly corn, soybeans, wheat, etc. So our job there is, as a wholesale distributor, is to get the best rates for our retailers for these products and the farmers that are part of the system. But really, we add a lot of intelligence in the process. How to best utilize the products that we're buying that are going to go into the ground. How do we use technology to better implement some of these capabilities that are, like a lot of technologies goes into these products themselves, but how do you get the best out of it on the farm? So that we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's our crop inputs business. Then we get into animal nutrition, and the brand is a Purina brand. Purina, there's a Nestle Purina as well. That's dog and cat, but we do every other species in North America. So think horses, chickens, cattle, cows, goats, you name the animal other than dog and cat, we have the feed for it. So we're a basic manufacturer in that space where we formulate the feed, and then we sell that to either retailers, or we sell it to big box companies like Tractor Supply that then sell it to consumers. So there's a little bit of ag business there, especially when you talk about producers that have a lot of animals, but also consumer business where it could be just one or two animals that you have, in the farm or on even at home. And so an interesting business there, and one that's a lot of fun. Then we have our dairy business that most folks would know Land O'Lakes for, is the butter. So that goes back to the roots of this organization, where we buy the milk from dairy producers. We turn that into butter and cheese and other derivative products. And then we sell that to food retailers, and then you would find that in the grocery store. So that's, things that most people would recognize the Land O'Lakes name for. And then our last business is a sustainability-based business. So it's looking across our businesses and how we implement sustainability in our four walls, but also how do we look at sustainability for the farmers that are part of our system, the retailers, and really coming up with interesting practices that would then revolutionize the way we go do farming, as an example, and we can generate carbon credits, and then we sell those carbon credits to downstream players, et cetera, et cetera. And when I say farm to fork, we're all connected. So you think about the seed at the beginning that's sold, that gets into the ground, it's grown, it turns, into a crop. We harvest it. When you look at our animal business, corn and soybeans are like the main ingredients to creating a feeding formulations for any type of animal. And so in the number one species we serve in Purina is our cows, and dairy cows particularly. And so you think of our owners or our members, some of those cows are their cows, and then they produce butter and cheese, or milk, and then we turn it into butter and cheese, and you find it at the store. So when we talk about the whole spectrum from the time in which the seed went into the ground to you and I consuming a product at the store, we sort of have the whole gamut end to end. And then obviously we all do all of that with a lot of sustainability practices along the way. So that's a little bit of our business, right? And as I kind of described each one of them, we talk a little bit about some of the technology, right? How do you, when you buy seed and you plant it into the ground, how can you use technology to help you make a better decision and get away from intuition? And there's a lot more things we do there to help you in season while the crop is growing. We make decisions around nutrition of the plant itself, and even when is a good time to harvest it, et cetera, et cetera. On the animal nutrition side, we'll use technology to help you manage the animals that are on the farm. We'll help you manage the gut microbiome of your horses, if that's what you have, and we use technology to be able to help with that. And then on the dairy production side, obviously, there's a lot of technology we work on with a lot of our retailers, but even our dairy producers. How do we help them monitor the cows that are in their barns? How do we make the most as far as getting the best quality of their cows? What should they be fed? Which ties back to our feed business. And then when we look at our sustainability business, when it's connected end to end, it's all about technology, capturing all the data points along the way, understanding what practices are we using today, and optimizing and changing our practices to be able to leverage better sustainability practices to be put in place. And then our technology tracks all of that. And then when we sell a credit downstream, obviously that's all done through a technology transaction. So that's how our technology team gets involved a little bit around all of it, right? And we touch all the different pieces there.
It's incredibly cool what you're doing here. And if we scroll down our LinkedIn news feeds at the moment, it's full of stories around AI and data analytics, and even from a consumer tech point of view. Anyone following the events in Vegas this week for CES, they're all going to be seeing things around AI everywhere and data analytics, etc. So to drill into some of the work that you're doing here, I'm curious, how is AI being utilized to assist farmers in and ultimately making them or helping them make more informed decisions regarding things like soil, seed placement, and also what results have you noticed this having on crop yields and sustainability? Because you're solving real problems here, and I'd love for you to expand on this.
Yes, absolutely, Neil. And that's I love that question. It's almost this is why I have passion talking about, right? And and AI, I mean, it's an artificial intelligence becoming almost synonymous with just using technology these days, right? Everything has AI in it. And we've been doing it for quite some time, particularly around the predictive side of things. So in that crop inputs business that I mentioned earlier, where we buy the seed, and I said we have a lot of knowledge that we help farmers make decisions every day, right? So if we kind of double click on that a little bit, part of what we do is we actually have these things called answer plots. They're research plots where we buy all the seed ahead of time before the season, before the seed's available the next season. We actually purchase it ahead of time and we plant it into all these plots that are all in. There's about 115 of them, and they're dispersed in all the areas where we do business. And when we put the seed into the ground, and then we also apply crop protection to it, we learn quite a bit about how that seed performs in a given soil type, how that seed performs in a given climate, how that seed performs given the type of practices that you may put in place around tillage, for example. And we capture all that data. And then what we do with that data is, as now the products are available to farmers, that data is turned into more ways of which you can help a farmer make a best decision on their field. Now, this is where the AI comes into place, right? So there's a lot of predictive types things where we go, look, for the area you're in, for the topography, the soil, the climate, these are the seed profiles that best match, sort of give you the best potential on that field. But also here are the practices you need to follow around the season that you can get the most out of it. However, we also know that the weather is very unpredictable and it changes as the season goes along. So we will use AI to be able to adjust some of the recommendation as the crop's coming out of the ground. And so those are the types of ways. And there's a big, between the farmer and us, there's these retailers I talked about, and these retailers have these professionals called agronomists. An agronomist is like the all-knowing person that really can help the farmer make those decisions. Because some of that, yes, it could be very analytical in nature, but you need someone who's actually local, that understands the environment that the plants are growing in, that can give that best advice to that farmer. So we work a lot to put these technology tools and the AI in the hands of these agronomists that can then best help those farmers make those decisions, right? And some of the things we do, for example, just to get a little more tactical around the AI to the agronomist, there's this thing called a crop protection guide. It's like almost like the Bible of crop protection, right? This is the book, right? It's this big, and it's 400 pages. And if you want to know about what chemistry goes on what field, combined with what, at what rate, where's the area where you're not damaging the plant and you're kind of taking care of it, of the diseases potentially, or the pests that are infecting that plant, this is the book you use. And a lot of agronomists, this is like the thing they walk around with. And the one I have is very pristine and neat, and but theirs is like beat up and has notes everywhere and everything else. So we're actually looking at generative AI to be able to digitize this book. We have a PDF version, but ironically, the PDF version is actually more complicated to use than the physical one, because the physical one you can quickly flip to where you need to go to, whereas digital becomes a little harder. And we've always struggled with that over the years, but now with generative AI, we can almost make it a conversation between the agronomist and the crop protection guide, right? So you have a conversation, you ask it to have this situation going on, I'm trying to put this much chemistry down, what do I combine it with, what's the rate? And there's sort of this interactive conversation that happens with a recommendation at the end that the agronomist then gives to the farmer. So those are ways in which you're starting to use tactically AI to be able to really take more of the guesswork out of what we used to do before, or just more of the tribal knowledge. Now, that's still very much required, but now we're using really AI to take it to the next level, which is really exciting.
It really is. And of course, farming is a very traditional industry. We've got families that have been running farms for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I'm curious, what are the biggest challenges Land O'Lakes faces in integrating advanced technologies into agriculture? Is there any resistance? Is there something else? And also, what opportunities do these challenges maybe present too?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if we can kind of keep going on the example we just gave, so the agronomist is using the AI, like this crop protection guide. We have a lot of predictive models that will tell us these seeds work well in this environment. This is what you should plant, et cetera. So those are all really, really neat technology platforms and capabilities that we didn't have before that are really taken to the next level. The other one that's really exciting is the sustainability side. So we could say things like, okay, I know you till the ground, but what if you didn't do tillage? And what if you put cover crops at the edge of the field, especially when there's near a waterway, and that will prevent the runoff, which means the chemistry that we're putting on actually goes into the ground and stays there, and even the micronutrients, and they're not running off into the stream, which, by the way, farmers don't want that either. They don't want the pollution, but also that's investment they're putting into the field that just is literally washing away, and they don't want that, right? The key is to take care of the problems you have on the field or make the plant stronger. So those are the types of things an agronomist would then help from a sustainability standpoint, right? By doing that, you're making the soil healthier, et cetera. But here's the challenge on all of this. First of all, there's an enormous amount of data required. So I talked about the data we capture by planting in our research plots. I talked about maybe some of the data that farmers have from their equipment, for example. But a lot of them have equipment that the newest equipment will have the most sophisticated software that captures really good data. But if you and most farmers have a variety of equipment that ranges from 1 year old to 20 years old. And the 20-year-old piece of equipment is not capturing the data that the new one is. And so, but because they have a mix, now we're having to figure out how to stitch that together because, we have our insight, but how do you localize it to that field? Now you need information about that field to really take it to the next level. And that's a challenge. Gathering that data, normalizing it, preparing in such as you talk more about artificial intelligence, all as good as the data you've got, right? And how well organized that is. The harder it is to organize, the bigger a challenge it becomes. So that may be a barrier to be able to kind of take it to the next level. Another thing we struggle with is also on the adoption side. And I don't mean because farmers don't want to. They love it. I mean, farmers are the most entrepreneurial set of individuals I have. A lot of them, they do farm, but they also have these side hustles and side businesses they've always got going on. I love how our dairy producers, for example, will milk cows, but they also have an ice cream business on the side that they run and things of that nature, right? Which is exciting. But the problem is there's a lot happening in a short period of time, especially when you're planting, as an example. You may have a very short window between the last rain and the next rain, and you're not even really sure about when you talk about the next rain, that would mean you have certainty when it's going to rain on that field on a given day at a given time. And that's not exactly all that predictable. But you do know that in general, maybe you have 3 or 4 days, maybe 8 if you're lucky, where it's going to be dry, and that is the time to plant. And when that happens, sometimes you have a plan for a field. I'm going to put this much seed on this ground at this density, and I'm going to leverage the maximum out of this soil, except the plan doesn't go that way because it was supposed to rain 8 days from now, but it actually rained tomorrow. So I was going to go to field number 3, and now I'm going to field number 7. I am not going to reconfigure the equipment with a new prescription and a new seed in the back. So I'm just going to do whatever I need to do, for today. And so all the best plans go out the door when it comes to doing it every single day, because it's like the Mother Nature just didn't cooperate with you that time. So that's where, you may have these awesome tools you want to put in place, but when rubber comes, when push comes to shove at that moment, you're just, you just kind of do what you need to do. And so you've got to get better at doing predictive type stuff. And so that way it just becomes just a normal way we do things and not make it an obstacle to be able to use the technology.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little research on you guys, and I was reading about the Winfield United Innovation Centre and its role in advancing agricultural technology. Can you expand on that and maybe tell the listeners a little bit more about how the unique facilities like the wind tunnel and drone technology are also contributing to this advancement too?
Absolutely. This is where we're trying to get better and better at modeling what happens on a field. Because like I said, I just talked about the challenge of gathering the data, what happens when, sort of like things just happen on the fly. So the way we try to minimize that is by trying to recreate what happens on a field in our facilities and in our plots. So when the Winfield United Innovation Center is one of those facilities where we have a couple of things happening there, which if you ever get a chance to come, I would love to take you through it. It's a really fun experience. But we have what's called a wind tunnel as an example. So it's this huge machine that really try to mimic wind conditions on a field, right? So we send wind through it like at different velocities. And then now we have a nozzle that would spray water and maybe a crop protection application with that wind. And then we try to see if you add an adjuvant that makes the droplet thicker, for example, what kind of impact it has at certain winds with a certain nozzle type. And we do this in a variety of combinations. That way we know if you apply the following chemistry at the following wind speed, at the following speed of the tractor itself, and, with these types of equipment like the nozzle, this is what you can expect to get as a result. So we capture that data, and that's information that's available, particularly to a farmer when they're in the cab doing this type of work, right? And that could be readily used that way. We have these chambers there that can mimic the conditions of like South Dakota, for example, on a hot July day, as well as another chamber could be mimicking the conditions of Indiana on a spring cool day. And we put the different seeds growing in these chambers, and then we attack them with different diseases and pests. The same one, but two different conditions. And how does the plant react to those conditions? So we try to mimic sort of what happens on the outside, but in a very controlled environment on the inside. And then we can see, okay, what things could you do to make sure that that plant is not heavily impacted by it? So that's another piece that's in the Innovation Center. And then we also have a phenotyping center where it's a greenhouse and we grow the plants and we try to grow the best possible plant there. But that's also where the answer plots that I mentioned earlier that are outdoors, that are in different geographies, we actually try to get the same different plants in the same spot with the same type of temperature, same pressure, and same sunlight as an example, and see how they perform. So we could actually do that indoors as well, and we capture that information. So these are the data sets that we gather, that we learn about plants and how they behave and how they react. And then we have that available to then make available to those agronomists and farmers that can make the decisions on the fly, combined with their local data.
Love that. And another huge topic in farming right now is sustainable farming practices. There's a huge focus on it. So how are Land O'Lakes promoting sustainable farming practices through technology? And what are the, again, tangible impacts on resource usage and environmental preservation? Anything you can share around that too?
Absolutely. I mean, this is core. Sustainable farming is just good farming, right? I mean, that is, and every farmer, when you start talking to them, that's what they want. I mean, number one thing is any farmer, particularly a generational farmer, they want to leave the land in better conditions that they found it, which means the soil has to be healthier every year, right? So you start with the soil in one condition. The following year, well, you finish your work that one year, and then you need to leave the soil in a better condition than when you started, so that the next year you have a better year. If you ask a farmer, do you want that? It's a resounding, it's not even a question, really. That's just given that it needs to be that way, right? So now what do we do to make sure that that happens? So what we need to do is really understand the characteristics of that soil, that field itself, the topography of that field. And now this is where we talk about practices like tillage, practices like cover crops. And these are the types of things that we start to explain to farmers. Although there may be a little bit of an increase in cost and maybe a change in practice required to be able to put these things into place, at the end of the day, we try to make sure that, like, from a financial perspective, they're not upside down. In fact, in a lot of cases, if they do things right and they put the right pieces of the puzzle together, they may end up in a situation where they are just as profitable as using a conventional method, or even more profitable if they go about this way while keeping the soil in a really good spot. So, and now we need a lot of data, and that's our Trutera business works with farmers to collect even additional data, that local data at the field level, so we can crunch out a lot of what-if type scenarios, and this is where we use the AI, to be able to say, what if you did a cover crop on this edge of the field? What if you changed the tilling practices on all your fields? What if you went to strip till instead? What if you added a pond in the middle of the field? Would that make a difference in how your field performs? And so these are the things we help them do. And then at the end, we also tell them, look, by photosynthesis, the plants themselves will absorb carbon out of the atmosphere and then sequester it into the soil. And the job here is to keep that carbon intact in the soil itself. And if you do that, then you're really sequestering carbon. And despite the fact they're using tractors and other things that emit carbon, at the end of the day, you could be carbon negative, not only carbon neutral, but carbon negative on that field, which means you're extracting more carbon in the atmosphere than you're putting out. And if that's the case, you can actually monetize that carbon credit and sell it, whether it's, as a scope 1, as a scope 3 in your industry, and where downstream customers that are using your grain want to be able to offset sort of their capabilities of what the products they produce, or whether it's a company that's outside of our industry that wants to then really buy an offset and buy a credit, you could do that as well, which then gets you into even a better financial position. So therefore, at the end of the day, it's a win-win for a farmer. Your financial situation is in a better spot. Your soil is healthier, and your plants are also going to be in a better condition going forward.
And speaking of going forward, we're recording this podcast at the beginning of 2024. But if I was to ask you to look a little further ahead, what emerging technologies or indeed innovations do you believe will have the most significant impact on the future of agriculture? You must be following so many different trends, so many emerging technologies, but is there anything that really stands out to you or excites you at the moment?
Yeah, I think we talked about artificial intelligence, but that's such a big umbrella, right?
Yeah.
And I would go a little bit deeper into the deep learning side of things, where, like I said, today, we're not exactly, we do a lot of predictive analytics, but we're not in a spot where we can actually model exactly what happens at the end of the year. If you told me model exactly what happened on that field, we're not quite there yet. So I think this concept of modeling exactly what happened is going to be the next step, right? Because then you could do a lot of what if scenarios. You can make quick decisions on the fly. You could even create, there's a lot of farming games out there today, but you could almost gamify it, right? And it could almost be a game of like, where do you want to make your bets and where you don't want to make your bets, and how do you adjust properly? I think that's going to be exciting. I think sensors are getting interesting. More and more sensors are getting deployed onto fields so you can capture more of that local data that I mentioned earlier. So this intelligent edge, not just a basic sensor, but is there some processing that could even happen at the edge itself that can give a better insight into kind of how to make better decisions going forward? We didn't quite talk too much about drones, but I'm excited about drones. Went through this excitement at first, and then it was everybody loved flying them, right? Because they're such fun toys. And then it was, the minute you lost one, when the combine ran over it, when the battery ran out on the drone, that's the day you go, you know what? This was a fad. I'm done with it. We're beyond that now, and now we're starting to use drones to get better imagery, local imagery. Folks are starting to use drones to do applications themselves. So it's deep in the season, even if you wanted to make a change, for example, or you wanted to go combat some disease, when for example, corn is too high, the equipment can't get in there, right? It's just the plant is too high at that moment, but a drone can easily go and help rectify some of those problems. So that's another one that I think will get it more excited. And then all of it working together, the sensors, the drones, the modeling, the satellite imagery, all that coming together, which is going to make us better at farming, right? And then in a more sustainable way. So that's what's exciting for me. And obviously the equipment is also another area that's getting more and more interesting and becoming more autonomous. They kind of run themselves now. And, could you have multiple pieces of equipment running at the same time? That will be a thing that'll happen in the future as well. Do they need to be as big as they are today? They got bigger because we didn't have enough people to run them. But if they become more automated, can they actually be smaller and get more work done? That's also a possibility. Like I said, like I mentioned earlier in the planting, you have such a short window. If you could maximize that time and even do things at night, that could be super, super interesting going forward too.
It really could. And another serious matter, of course, as we record this podcast, just a couple of days ago, there was a big news report on the global average temperature reaching the highest ever last year. So with that in mind, in what ways are Land O'Lakes addressing the challenges posed by climate change, particularly in maintaining crop growth under increasing volatile weather conditions?
And that's the way you talk to a farmer. If you ask them, is the climate variable in your region, in your area, is it more or less predictable than it was in the future? Yeah. It would tell you that it is much more volatile now than it was in the past. The little weather apps and everything else they've got, they can tell you 3, 4, 5, 7 days out of best what's going on. But you're doing planning in January for what's going to happen in April, and then for a crop that's going to grow in August. And if you ask them, how's the prediction at that moment? It's like, well, I have no idea, right? And that's where there's a lot of variability there. So I think, when we say, look, go back and get the soil healthier, sequester more carbon than you put out, right? I'm excited even to think about electrification of the equipment, because that would even help with less output of carbon into the atmosphere. Those are the ways in which farmers can really contribute to combating the increase in temperatures, right? On the dairy production side, same thing. A lot of farmers now are becoming, they manage their manure better. They cover their manure. They turn that through a digester into energy. They're reducing big time the methane that goes out into the atmosphere. So all in all, these are us as a cooperative, like being the sort of the membership of our dairy producers, of our ag retailers, it's our responsibility to go out and figure out what are these best practices, what are the things that make sense to you, educate you on what is possible and what the impact of it is, and then hopefully help you implement it. So that's why a lot of these technology we put in place is to really help our members really change and go to the next level.
And of course, you can't do it all on your own. And I'm not sure if you're going to be able to share any names or anything here, but I'm curious, are there any key collaborations or partnerships that have been instrumental in Land O'Lakes' technological advancements across the agriculture landscape? And how are these partnerships and collaborations helping build and shape the future of farming?
Yeah, well, what's exciting is a lot of ag companies recognize that technology is crucial for what they need to do, right? And so from an equipment standpoint, I mean, you have John Deere, we work closely with them, particularly even on that spray tunnel piece that I mentioned earlier. We work with Bayer quite a bit. I mean, we are Bayer's largest distributor. And so therefore, there's a lot of technology they put into the products they produce. And then our goal is how do we take that technology, combine it with what we have, and deliver it at the local level. So we do a lot of work with them, same with Corteva, same with Syngenta. So I'd love working with those organizations and some of the technological advancements they're putting forward. BASF is another one. But I would say also, we've got tech partners that are helping us, like Microsoft, right? And Microsoft's been an interesting partnership for us because they've said, look, we are not the domain experts. We're not the subject matter experts in agriculture, but we certainly know tech. We know cloud. We know computing, edge computing. How can we make these services available to you? And then what, let's call it customization or adoption do we need for agriculture? And that's we've been working closely with them. And a lot of the platforms we're on, whether it's in our Tratera business or our crop inputs business, run on the Microsoft Azure platform, which is really exciting. And Microsoft was also the first purchaser of our carbon credits, right? So when we did offsets, one of the things they wanted to prove is if we invest in these technologies and company use them, could we use it as a method to offset our carbon emissions and our carbon profile? And they were able to do that over the last 2 years. So that's been an exciting partnership with them. So we've got different players that help us. Obviously, we are by no means doing this on our own. We try to use our mindset as one of collaboration. And, there's folks that know their area of the business really well. We actually do more choreographing than developing. Yes, there are some areas we do some development on our own, just where we have deep expertise. But in general, is how do we put a solution together for our members, which are these dairy producers and ag retailers, and put it in their hands.
Wow, incredibly cool. I love chatting with you today. But before I let you go, it's time to have a little bit of fun with you now. I always like to ask my guests a more personal question. So I'm going to ask you if there's a book that has inspired you or means something to you, or a song that we can add to our Spotify playlist. All I'm going to ask, though, is what would you like to leave everyone listening with and why?
Yeah, the book that comes to mind for me, and it's been an impactful book for many, many years, is Tuesdays with Maury, right? Yeah. And it's interesting because it has nothing to do with tech. But you know what, though? Like, despite all the technology advancements, all the artificial intelligence, all the crazy things we can do, even farming at the core, it's a relationship business. It's a relationship all in all, right? I won't even take the word business out of it. And these farmers that I get to work with, whether they're row crop farmers or dairy producers, building that relationship and seeing sort of how they look at life and how they approach things. And it's always, I mean, when you talk to a farmer or an ag retailer, we don't get into that business side of things till much deeper into that in our conversation, right? First, it's all about, hey, how are you doing? What's happened? Anything with your family? And really sort of getting to know you at the core. And if you establish that and we do like a good job of creating that connection, everything else just comes very easy after that, right? And and they trust you, and so getting this element of trust is really important and living to the max. And that's kind of where I go back to at the end of the day. I'm like, I know this is scary. It's a plunge for you a little bit to kind of this, but I'm like, you know what? Like, we shouldn't have any regrets. We should go do this, and we don't get many chances to try it. Why not now, right? And let's go head on. And so that book for me has always been very inspirational. And it's the only book I've read 3 times. And actually, and every time I sort of forget some of the messages, I'll go back and read it again.
Well, I'll get that added straight to our Amazon wish list so listeners can check that out. And for anybody that would just love to find out more information about you, Land O'Lakes, the wind tunnel we talked about, and anything in between, maybe they want to see some videos, maybe they just want to contact you or your team to find out more. Where would you like to point everyone listening?
Yeah, so the best place for us to go is landolakesinc.com. right? So there's a INC you put in after Land O'Lakes. That would give you the full breadth of our organization, the crop inputs, the animal nutrition, the Trutera business, and our dairy business. However, landolakes.com itself is also one of our domains, and that's particularly for our dairy business. So if somebody's looking to cook something, particularly bake, I would say I love baking. So cookies, cakes, any sort of recipe, really. It's a big recipe site. We're very well done. And we have a kitchen here where we test all those things. So everything that's online, we've tested here, and people have said, give it a thumbs up. So I would recommend going there as well. But learning more about our organization, it will be landolakes.inc.com.
Awesome. And if I ever do make it over there to come and see you in person, if there was a role for chief taster, I'm your guy, okay?
We'll have you, yes. And then, by the way, the same recipe, we have different ovens and different stoves we use. So you even get to test the same thing a couple of times, which is not a bad deal.
I love it. And I'm just loving learning more from you today, especially around how you're leveraging technologies and innovation to reshape agriculture and also ultimately secure that long-term resilient and sustainable food system. And also love hearing about your partnerships, how you're using AI to equip farmers with tools to make better, more informed decisions about soil and seed placement. This week, I've been following so much of CES, and there were so many solutions looking for problems. It's just so refreshing to hear you leveraging technology to solve real-world problems and make the world a better place. So you are the perfect antidote to everything I've been following today. So thanks for sharing your story.
All right, now, thank you, Neil. Thanks for having me. This has been exciting, and thank you for letting us share our story.
I think it's clear that the intersection of technology and agriculture is more significant than ever. From utilising AI and machine learning for hyperlocal insights to embracing more sustainable farming practices through precision agriculture. And Land O'Lakes is setting a new standard in the agtech landscape, and the journey of transforming agriculture with technology is not just about innovation, but also about overcoming challenges and fostering collaborations. But what are your thoughts on the role of technology in modern agriculture? How do you see these advancements impacting our food system in the future? This is not my area of expertise, and I know there will be many people listening who feel passionately about this space. So please, I invite you, yes you, to join the conversation and share your insights with me. Email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just @NeilC.Hughes, and I'll feature your thoughts on here too. But remember, the field of agriculture is growing with technology and thriving in ways that we never imagined. So thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.